drive your throne.
Good to see all of you this morning. We're in the book of Ecclesiastes. We're going to be in chapter 2 of that study. We talked Wednesday night in that first paragraph, if you will, of chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. And we talked about the various things that the writer basically said, I pursued what? I pursued everything. I've tried it all. There's nothing under the sun that I haven't tried. And he makes an interesting conclusion about all those things in verse 11 that we'll start with here in just a moment to then springboard us into a further conversation about how the writer basically sees the life that he lived, the world that he lives in, and how we can become pretty much so focused on it that we miss really what's important. And so he'll have that discussion throughout the book. But before we get back into our discussion, if you would, let's bow our heads together, share in a word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, thank you for the day you've given us, this opportunity to open our Bibles together and discuss your word, to appreciate your wisdom and guidance that you provide. Father, give us the right perspective of the world we live in and how we should live within it. Give us the focus that should be on you and to recognize the benefits that you bring and that all good things actually come from you, not our own labor and work. Help us to be cautious of the things that we pursue, recognizing the challenges that it can often present. And just give us an ability to retain your wisdom and guidance that you share through this book. Help us in our study today. Guide us in all that's good and right. And we pray this through Christ's name. Amen. Okay, so here's his conclusion, right? Verse 11. Then I looked on all the works that my hands... And we pointed out Wednesday night towards the end of our study, he uses the word my and I a lot through that, right? This is what I did. This is what I pursued. This was what my thoughts were. And that's part of his challenge. So he looked at all the works that my hands had wrought, and on the labor that I had labored to do, and behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. I pursued everything that I could put my eyes and hands on. I tried it. If it was there available to me, I gave it a try. And at the end of all that, it was still vanity and vexation of spirit. It still left me wanting. It still left me empty. It still left me challenged. It didn't answer anything, was the conclusion that he made after all of those pursuits that he had. And so we discussed briefly Wednesday night. He said, I turned to myself then to behold wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do that cometh after the king, even that which hath been already done? There was nothing, right, out there available for him to pursue that he hadn't tried. But then I saw... Here's an interesting twist, if you will, a little bit. Then I saw that wisdom excelleth folly, as far as light excelleth darkness. Okay, so we've talked about this contrast, right? There's two types of wisdom under discussion in the book of Ecclesiastes, right? There is the godly wisdom that comes from God. If this is Solomon, there's that godly wisdom that was bestowed upon him as a gift that came from God when he became king. And then there is the earthly human wisdom that seems to be trapping him into vexation of spirit and vanity of vanities, right? So you've got this tug of war, if you will, going on between the wisdom of men and the wisdom of God. And he had the one given to him, and he pursued the other very vehemently. And at the conclusion of it all, he didn't necessarily see the wisdom of men having brought any real benefit. But he does make an interesting contrast. He said, if I had to choose one or the other, if I had to choose the wisdom, I believe he's talking about in verse 13, the wisdom of men. If I had to choose that wisdom over the folly of man, then okay, right? The wisdom is better. You can as far as light exceeds darkness, he says. And so this isn't a complete and utter repudiation of the wisdom of men. The writer's trying to get us to just simply see it in its proper place. It's vanity of vanities if that's your pursuit and you're just trying to learn anything and everything new under the sun. Then you're just adding sorrow to your heart and vexation to your spirit. If this is about trying to get smarter than God, then you're going to fail miserably at that, and you're going to feel empty and wanting at the end of that pursuit. But in this sense, he says, if you're trying to just avoid the folly and calamities that come from poor choices that men often make, then okay, that wisdom may benefit you. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walketh in darkness, and I myself perceived also that one event happeneth to them all. So, he's going to flip it back here in a minute, so just kind of have to watch his turn as he makes these contrasts. But at least the wise man's doing what? In verse 14. He's paying attention, right? At least the wise man's paying attention to where he's walking, how he's walking, where he's going, what he's doing. The wise man at least has his eyes open. The foolish one, or those who pursue folly, just walk along in darkness and blindness, right? They're not concerned about what trap, what pitfall, what difficulty, what harm they may be walking into. And so from that sense, being wise is better than being foolish. Having your eyes open and paying attention and being alert and watching what you're doing and stepping is far better than just the folly of man that just blindly thrusts himself into darkness without a concern of challenge or difficulty that might come from those things. And so if you're just contrasting those two things, he says, sure, the wisdom is better. But then he says to himself, verse 15, there is one event that happeneth to both, and neither one can avoid it. Then said I in my heart, as it happeneth to the fool, so it happeneth even to me, and why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart that this also is vanity. For there is no remembrance of the wise more than of the fool forever, seeing that which now is in the days to come shall all be forgotten. And how dieth the wise man as the fool? Okay, so if you're talking about staying out of trouble, watching your step, minding where you're going, that wisdom's beneficial to you. The foolish folly of man thrusts himself into all kinds of harm that you would probably be better off avoiding. But if you think you're going to get so smart that you're going to be able to avoid some of the inevitables of life, then you're not going to get there. Because he said, I what? I tried. He says, I tried. And he's still getting older, and he's still aging, and he's still drawing nigh unto death. And it didn't matter how wise he got, and no matter how, it didn't matter how much he saw in front of him, no matter how much he paid attention to what he was doing, no matter how eyes forward he was in his life, it didn't change the inevitable that comes to both the wise and foolish equally. So if your pursuit of wisdom is in some way an effort to try to outrun some of the permanent inevitables that this world has in store for all of us, then you're vanity of vanities, vexation of spirit. You're just spinning your wheels. If you think you're going to outrun death, if you think you're going to outrun the end that comes to all men, if you think somehow, and by the way, that pursuit has been going on among man's existence for a long, long time. From thoughts of cryogenics, right? From ideas of fountains of youth, that you can found these spring waters and you know it's going to give me right. From mythology to real pursuits, men have convinced themselves that there's something out there that's going to allow for them to beat the inevitable. And the writer here says, I've seen the wise and the foolish, and one may have temporary advantage over the other because their eyes are open and they pay attention. But at the end of it all, they both die. They both come to the same end. And here's an interesting statement, verse 17. Therefore I hated life, because the work that is wrought under the sun is grievous unto me, for all was vanity and vexation of spirit. He basically admits that he wrecked his life because he kept trying to pursue wisdom that was a waste of time. He admits that he couldn't find anything redeemable about his life. And it wasn't because there was nothing possible for him to find redeeming. It was because of his pursuits and his efforts. I tried everything. I pursued everything. I owned everything. I built more houses than any one person could ever even try to live in. Right? He just goes on and on and on. I outsmarted everyone. And I landed at the end of that process just like the foolish. I'm at the end, and then when I see all that. So I'll pause here. I keep over talking you maybe a little bit. So what do you see? What's the warnings here? Go ahead, Bob.
I have a question concerning Solomon's wisdom. Verse 9, he mentions that through all of this, my wisdom never left me. Now, is this wisdom from God and the earthly wisdom, or just the wisdom from God he's talking about?
Yeah. No, I think he had both. I mean, I think the conversation within the text is he had both. When he says it never left, I think that context is the idea that God bestowed a certain level of wisdom upon him. And he said, I never lost that. It was always there. The problem was he pursued so much other wisdom that it kept conflicting. No wonder he's miserable, right? He's trying to, in his mind, be able to live in two sets of wisdom, two sets of guidance, two sets of what's right and wrong, two sets of what and right. And so he's always able to recall and remember the wisdom God had bestowed upon him, but he's just putting himself in challenge, though, because he's pitting the two against each other all the time. No wonder he's miserable. And by the way, we do the same thing sometimes. We make ourselves miserable because we know enough about what God wants from us, but we let enough human wisdom to put us in warfare with the two. And all that ends up happening in that is I'm miserable all day. I know what's right. I know what's wrong. I know what God wants from me. I know what His expectations are. I can appreciate the wisdom that He provides, but I don't want that. I want what man's offering. I want the wisdom that comes from human thinking. And now I'm in this battle and this struggle between the two, and I'm miserable, and no wonder, right? No wonder. Go ahead, Colin, so I'll come back.
It's almost like when he talks about, well, I outsmarted all the fools, I outsmarted everybody, and have made it here where fools haven't anyways, so what now?
Yeah. He didn't gain anything. He didn't gain anything. Go ahead, Lord.
It makes me think that nothing in this earthly life is going to satisfy us. You know, so that just shows that there's something, I don't know how to put it, something higher that we need to be pursuing. So that's where God comes in. I mean, we need to pursue Him because we are made after Him.
Yeah.
So we tend to just want to go back, you know.
Yeah, we do. We struggle and create greater challenges for us regularly sometimes. What else do you see here?
The wisdom, he wouldn't have been so grievous and vexed of spirit at all. He would have just kept on going.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have been vexation at all.
Yeah. It is, and yet he would have ended in the same demise. And it is interesting, right? Because that's really the conflict. Is because he did know both, and he knew that the human wisdom that he had gained was of no real benefit to him, but he still let it put him in conflict with what God wanted from him. And it does create challenges.
And there is a difference, like when you put your efforts into the earthly work and the earthly rewards, there's a huge difference. When you're doing works for God, you don't feel that vexation spirit then. You feel.
Yeah. The answer to that is get out of the human wisdom side of the equation, right? And just stay in the lane of the wisdom of God, and that's how you remove the vexation of spirit. But as long as you're in conflict, and by the way, I'll add this, and sometimes we wonder, do some people have any understanding of the wisdom of God? But I'll go back. Somebody mentioned the idea of created in the image of God, right? There is something innately in our image, right, that we're implanted with, that really ought to be in conflict anytime there's the wisdom of men are leading me to resist my nature. And again, I don't want to go down a path of a different study, but you've heard me make this point multiple times that, again, that's why Genesis 1:1 is crucial. It's absolutely crucial in our understanding of who we are, what we're about, and how we should be living. Because if in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, right? If we don't have that at the foundation of who we are and what we're about and our decision making, then we'll miss out on understanding our very nature of how we've been created and what we've been created to be, and then why there's this struggle and the misery that it brings. Go ahead, Jeff.
To me, a little bit of it seems like Solomon is covering a different angle of something that you see in the New Testament, where God tells you to lay up treasure in heaven, because that can't be eaten by moths or corrupted by men. And then you have the other angle of it, like Solomon's talking about. All these things can be affected by man, can be affected by others around us. What we're looking for is something that others can't see. What we're looking for is something that we can't see.
Yeah.
We have faith in it. We have belief.
And it is the same conversation, just different way of looking at that very same conversation that Solomon's exercising here and what those New Testament writers illustrate as well.
I think it's interesting in verse 16 where it talks about there's no remembrance of the wise more than the fool. Now, I mean, we have Solomon recorded in the Bible, but I think he's talking in the human sense again.
Yeah.
And over time, man tends to forget that this person was fantastic and did this and that and the other. There's just, why am I doing this? There's no legacy to it. There's no point for those coming later. I didn't do anything.
Yeah, and I think that I do think he does at times write in very generalizations, right? Because you can, I mean, we do have statues and monuments, and right. So there are people that are remembered differently than others, you know. But I don't think that's what I think his point is for the person, right? At the end of it all, will I even know whether I've been right? We all hit the same demise at the end of it all. I won't even know whether I'm remembered or not. I won't have any there'll be no acknowledgement. Regardless of what my eternal state might be, there's not going to be any list of, hey, these guys have statues down there on earth, right? You see that in him, and he sees all the futility of it all, because you think you're going to create this big legacy and I'm always going to be remembered. Well, maybe some men might remember you, but it doesn't bring any benefit to you.
It's almost like we talked about this earlier. They may, remember you as a person, like what you did, but they won't really remember like the lessons behind it, and you'll end up making the same mistakes over and over again that everybody else made.
Yeah. And right, we keep repeating the very same things that challenge men all along. Notice verse 18. So as he segues into this conversation, he says, yea, I hated all my labor, which I had taken under the sun, because I should leave it unto the man that shall be after me. Okay. So it's a weird thought, really, in some ways, when you think about it, because there's a little selfishness there, right? Maybe I'm wrong, but there's a sense of a little bit of, I worked hard, I did all this labor, I piled up all these things, and then oh no, somebody else is going to, right? Somebody else is going to gain the benefit of that. It's a little bit like Jesus' parable, right? A man had, many worldly goods, and he kept building bigger barns so he could store it all, and he finally reached a point where he thought he could just kick back and eat, drink, and be merry. And the Lord comes to him and says, today thy soul shall be required of thee, right? And then, oh no, I spent all this time, collecting all this stuff for it only to be then just given to the next guy that comes after me. And so why should I exhaust myself, right? Why should I be miserable? Why should I do all these things just to accumulate stuff to be given to the next guy? I think sometimes we may not have the wealth of Solomon, but we might be guilty of that at times, right? Where we're trying we're thinking about, well, what are we going to leave and how? And at the end of the day, it's just vexation of spirit, thinking about how much energy and time has been spent trying to leave something for the next guy who you don't have any idea what they'll do with that. I met a fellow one time, and he told me about a concern that he had. He was an older gentleman, and he had accumulated, it wasn't Bill Gates money, but he had is Bill Gates still, is he still at the top? Maybe he's not. Who's at the top now? Is it Elon? Is it Zuckerberg? Who is it? I don't know who it is. Danny, you know who? Yeah, anyway, and there may be some Sultan somewhere that we don't even know about. But anyway, right, I'm just trying to figure out who I should be illustrating now. But anyway, he had one son who was going to inherit all of it, and that son had one son, and he was going to inherit all that, and he was genuinely concerned about what would that grandson do when all of this accumulated stuff was one day just handed to him. Now, the good news part of that story, by the way, is that years later I was back in that place, and the grandson was stable, wise. He wasn't driving around in 2 Lamborghinis and a Ferrari. He drove an old Chevy S10. He a very practical kid. And so that was the good stuff. But he was genuinely concerned, right? Because you accumulate all this stuff. You can't use it all. You can't spend it all. Somebody else is going to have it, and maybe they won't be very wise with it. It might become a deterrent to them. It might become a detriment to them. And so the writer's just trying to, when he saw it, he said, I hated it. Verse 18, I hated all my labor, which I had taken under the sun, because I should just leave it unto the one after me, and who knoweth whether he shall be a wise man or a fool? Who knows whether he'll do right by those things or be foolish by those things? Yet shall he have rule over all my labor wherein I have labored and wherein I have showed myself wise unto the sun. This is also vanity. Not only will it just be left to somebody who might be foolish, but I won't have what? I won't have any control or say over the matter. It just falls into the next guy's hands. Why am I adding, right? And remember, that's really the question he's asking. Why did I do this? Why have I been miserable all these years? Why have I, his words, not mine, why have I hated all my labor? Why have I hated life? Verse 17. Why have I spent all of this time being miserable? Yeah. Just to build wealth and accumulate things. So the point, friends, is not, I would hope, isn't that we say, yeah, I feel like Solomon, right? I hope that's not the conclusion we make here, that we just resolve ourselves, yeah, I kind of feel like he does. No, I hope the conclusion is, he's telling me what he did to cause that and what we can do to avoid that. That's the lesson learned. Not to just resolve ourselves to the idea, well, I'm just like Solomon. This what a miserable, No, the lesson learned is, he did everything under the sun. He thought that human earthly pursuits would bring him joy, happiness, benefit. And it didn't do any of that. It just caused him trouble. When he turned his attention towards God, we'll see it in later text in the book, that is when the vexation of heart and spirit and soul could change. And the sorrow that life often brought can change. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't want us to leave the book of Ecclesiastes just, oh man, it's miserable, right? I don't want to feel that way. No, learn from it. He's telling us what he did to cause the problem. And again, 2 ways to learn things in life, right? Education and experience. And sometimes the easiest and less harmful way to learn is education. He experienced it all and he was miserable because of it. We can learn from him and say, okay, I'm going to do everything I can to avoid all that. I'm going to get my eyes focused in the right directions and avoid all that consequential stuff that he suffered through. Go ahead, Judy.
I think now that he's judging the way you're thinking about the way he was and the way things that are going now, that he's regretting marrying all those wives just to have peace and to get more land.
Yeah, I think he is a man full of regret. When he looks back at just about everything, from the choices, decisions, his relationship with God, his accumulated wealth that came at a high price. He's marrying anybody and everybody in order to keep expanding that prosperity. I think he just looks back at it all and he's just, what was I doing? Right? And the beauty of that is, he could have just said in his heart, boy, what a colossal failure. And wow, it's a shame I didn't learn this 40 years ago and then done. No, he's wise enough to go, I need to write this down. And obviously the inspiration of God's working here too. But the wisdom of, I need to write this down because other people need to know that things weren't always great in the heart and mind of the king. And even somebody who would have thought, well, Solomon's got every advantage in the world. How could that guy have a bad day ever? And every day was miserable for him because of the choices that he made. And he's at least wise enough to write it down and tell us about it. Yeah.
You can kind of compare this with the Psalms. He's trying to find an earthly happiness. While a lot of the Psalms you see when they're written, some of the biggest questions that are asked: why are the people who do evil? Why did they always look so happy? Why do they always seem so fulfilled? If this was Solomon writing this, Solomon took it one step further instead of just asking and actually participating in the stuff that earthly men would have done and found out truly they're not.
Yeah.
They just, they don't even really look happy when you really get into it.
Yeah, created more problem than joy, for sure. So therefore I went about, verse 20, to cause my heart to despair of all the labor which I took under the sun. For there is a man whose labor is in wisdom, and in knowledge, and in equity. Yet to a man that hath not labored therein shall he leave it for his portion. This also is vanity and a great evil. Again, Solomon's understanding, the writer's understanding of the conclusion of everything that he had accomplished and done, and what the end result is going to be. And again, it's back to that contrast. Even a man of great wisdom and knowledge and all of the things that you would have thought brought him benefit still had the same consequential end. For what hath man, verse 22, of all his labor, and of the vexation of his heart wherein he hath labored under the sun? For all his days are sorrows, and his travail grief. Yea, his heart taketh not rest in the night. This is also vanity. Okay, so even the guy who might have, he might have good intentions, right? He might have positive thought processes as to what he's hoping to accomplish here. His intentions don't change the reality that if his energy and time and efforts are continually pursuing the labors of men, you're going to just simply cause sorrow and vexation of heart. The motive doesn't change the reality. That's an interesting thought that he expresses there. Because sometimes you might think, well, because my motive is pure, the reason why I'm doing something is for a good cause or a good purpose. Therefore, I won't experience the same heartaches. And he's like, no. If your energies and time are consumed with work, labor, earthly things, it won't matter what the cause is. It won't matter what the pursuit, even if it was wisdom. It's all still vanity. For all his days are sorrows, and his travail grief. Yea, his heart taketh not rest in the night. This is also vanity. Got any 4:30 in the morning wakers in the room? Brain just firing at 175 mile an hour. How many times have we done that? And notice I use the word we. How many times have we done that? And it's all about the world we're in. It's all about the circumstances of life presently. How much sleeplessness and travail of heart and grief have we brought onto ourselves because we can't get our mind to get away from the things of this world and earth. And it doesn't have to be the pursuit of wealth. It doesn't have to be about where am I going to, how am I going to earn the next dollar. It can be just about the world we live in. And we're recent days have reminded us, right? I'm going to preach the sermon now because then you guys will quit on me here in a little bit. But these past few weeks, you go, what? What's wrong with all of us? What is wrong with all of us? Right? And here that's I get it. And sometimes we stay awake at night and we're trying to resolve questions that man has what? Never resolved. But I will be the first. I will be the first to resolve it. Because that's what I do at 2 a.m. when I can't sleep. Right? And Solomon screaming at me, vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. All is vanity. You think you're going to get it all figured out? Well, guess what? There's nothing new under the sun, and men have had a whole host of things they haven't been able to figure out from start to finish. Right? Is it okay to have eyes open? The writer says yes. Is it better to have eyes open, to have enough wisdom to stay out of trouble? Yes. But are you going to figure it all out? No. And in the pursuit, are you going to be smiling? No. Is your heart going to be heavy or carefree? How's your physical health going to follow that? Right? Get our attention over here. Get our eyes on God. Get our eyes on His wisdom. And then we can avoid some of the vexation of spirit. Go ahead.
Even if you did figure it all out, would you be able to make the rest of the world figure it out?
Yeah. And you're right, because I have figured it out, by the way, and I can't make anybody. But you're exactly right. Even if we were able to get it all sorted here, you're not going to be able to change every person, circumstance, situation, idea. And then you wear yourself out, mentally, physically, every which way, because I don't understand why they don't understand. Right? I don't understand why. How is it that they don't understand what I understand so clearly? And vanity of vanities. We'll come back to that, Lord willing, on Wednesday. Finish up this chapter. Do your review questions. We'll cover those Wednesday night most likely, so make sure you're covering those review questions going into Wednesday. But I want to